Okay, so I'm like close, right? To where I have in the previous video I showed you like basically where kind of like a side quest, but it's important because it helps people see the whole the overall ecosystem when they're in a unique repository, and we would digitize the governance structure to where at all times anybody would be able to see it. So that makes it really easy. And one of the things that I think is going to be important, and I have to do this before I can like launch the education app, which is going to help everybody kind of get really versed on the information. And then that gets them to the onboarding wizard. And where I'm working on, well, what I need to finish is I need to ship the Mod Office app, because the Mod Office app is the centrifuge of the entire ecosystem. Basically, no matter who you are and what you do, no matter what, even if the ecosystem was done to completion, I'm shipping the whole thing, which is amazing, right? But in order to do that, no matter what, the Mod Office is the centrifuge of all that, because it has, even though it wouldn't be fully complete when launched, but what it's doing is it's basically a built-in Slack, but not just that. It's basically the place that is customly designed to organize everything that was designed and built in the ecosystem and how it's all organized. So I had to build a customized office that was built into the ecosystem, which then allows you to, as you're doing what you would normally do on your computer or whatever, on your repository, or if you're like on Slack or Asana or any other project management system, you would be communicating with people and then you would be storing information, etc. So the way the Mod Office works in the future is that it's basically embedded inside your toolbox type. And your toolbox type has an ID, which then that Mod Office is unique to that ID. And then anytime you're assigned something, you would be assigned, for example, a work terminal because you have access to a particular initiative, and maybe you're on team 202 that's working on work terminal 12, okay? And everything inside work terminal 12, maybe there's a product in there. Maybe there's a service in there that we're all working on. Or maybe there's you get the picture. And the thing is like when you're in there, it's going to have scope of work of like this is what we're doing, right? Like down to the grid. And that work terminal has an ID, which is going to be authenticated to then only be displayed to the authenticated mod offices that have access to that work terminal, right? Because it's the only way it could all get tracked and measured correctly. And there's going to be different teams in the ecosystem working on different things. Like there's not like, because it's too vast for everybody to work on the same thing because it's just too big. But at the same time, everybody's working on a part of the ecosystem that is going to make everybody's lives easier in the ecosystem. So it's funny, like everybody's working on something that's going to be beneficial to the other part of the ecosystem. And that all interconnects into the mod office, because the mod office, if it is all part of that. So like features are going to be getting shipped all the time from different parts of the ecosystem, which is going to enhance your mod office, which is going to help you be able to communicate to anything in the ecosystem correctly without it being like overtly cumbersome. And it's going to be easier for manage like governance to govern the framework, because if I want to issue a work terminal or a function terminal or a product terminal to a particular department within a particular branch and in a particular toolbox type, and there's 3 people that are authenticated, well, all I need is their toolbox ID number, and then I would be able to then authenticate the work terminal through my mod office to then send that authenticated work terminal to those mod offices. So those mod offices would get a notification, bing, that, hey, this is the authenticated work terminal that you have access to. Here it is, boom, and then there, everything that you have is in that work terminal, which is basically rendered based on your authentication ID. And then everybody's able to work via that way. That way, because it's open source, but it's open source through authentication. It's not just open source everything, because it's too much information. It's kind of like, and it's there for a reason. Like, if you're doing, if you're want to collaborate and you're authenticated to collaborate because you've done what was necessary to arrive there, because you can go infinitely. Like, if you go through the steps, like, you'll find that you're like, you have access to everything, so long as you're like doing what you say, right? Like, you go through the course set and mm, you have access, and then it's like, okay, you have access, are you doing anything? And if you're not doing anything, then ultimately you would in a way lose off access, because why are we sharing this information? Like, why are we looping you in the loop for nothing, right? Like, this is weird. So what we would be doing is bringing people in, especially because everybody at this level is like, you're either a leader or you're working with someone that is already leading that, and you are collaborating together. So if you're not participating, then it's kind of awkward. So like, uh, so that being said, what it's going to end up being is this, like, this, I just see it for, I use the office, I use that mod office already, but it's not done to the point to where what you guys need it for. So that may take me a little, a tad bit. I got to finish that. I'm just trying to make it really nice for everybody, is where what I'm trying to get it at, is where I'm trying to get at. Because if I can make it convenient, it'll be practical for everybody to really get what's going on. Because it's not just about code and a code base. There's so much context that goes into what we're doing before we're doing something. Because it's like, when you're building a house or whatever, it's not just like getting a bunch of people together and putting sticks in the ground, and like, it's like there's stuff that has to be like, everybody needs to be somewhat on the same page, so that we can kind of be like working where we're not stepping on over each other, and or people working on things that are not relevant in the ecosystem because it's just not what the focus is. And so it's going to be a very organized operation, because there's really these main pillars of initiatives that we have to have primarily done. And if that's what we're doing, is we're categorizing everybody based on those initiatives. We drill down, everybody has access to those mod offices, so we're able to collaborate effectively. And then as those pillars are online, then we can start venturing off into the ecosystem, because those main pillars is what holds the ecosystem together. So they're not 100% done, is where I'm getting at. So like, we can't just let the horses out of the barn just yet. Like, we have to make sure that we have these tools in place. And that's what everybody's here to do, is collaborate on, is finishing out these tools. Because once the tools are done, the next thing is taking, I've already done it with the United States in a couple states, to where like I'm able to, it's actually not that hard. It's kind of easy. So what you do is you go to a government site, and you're able to extrapolate all the different departments that exist in a country. and you can extrapolate that and then bring it into Postgres. And obviously, you have to have back end engineering experience to do this, or just back end experience, but or just data experience. But so you extract the data of all those departments and what they do, and the governments have access had that data public. And then what you do is you then clean the data, because sometimes the data is not clean, but you can clean the data and then put it in Postgres, and then you now have it, that country and that state, mirrored. So meaning anything in that state that's happening in real time, like their information architecture, we now have that information architecture in the ecosystem that is live now with that toolbox type ID. And then, so that state, I'll give you an example. The United States and the state of Texas, right? Because I have the state of Utah. I did the state of Utah last. That was the last one I did. So the state of Utah, for example, the state of Utah in the United States, uh, I have all your state departments, your county departments, and your city departments, and all the cities and all the counties and anything to do with your state. I have a mirror of that inside this ecosystem. So that means every ID is already issued to each one of those departments. So that's why the mod office is important, right? Because what happens is when all these systems come online, all those IDs in the back end, because the back end is so big, like you don't understand big until you see that. That's like look at space, because that's what that looks like. So it's like you're taking all those once those IDs are already issued, right? And we have all those the mod offices packed and ready to go, and all some of the other stuff. Now we're able to issue out those department type interfaces to each and every single ID. So that means if I wanted to work in that department of interior in the state of Utah, right, or in the county of Utah, whatever, in Salt Lake, then I could work inside that terminal in Utah that is mirrored just like they do. And you're able to now embed through the work terminals, uh, is create policies inside of it. And then now you're working with other tools that were embedded, because that's what the mod office is. It's a series of tools that allow you to play governor, right? Because you can now simulate a policy that would be implemented at that level in that department. And then now you can then run simulations on population, demographics, because we have all that data. So then now we're running a simulation of how that policy would be handled based on a simulation. And we could set parameters on that or whatever. And this is why all these other tools are just so important. And if people just have a little patience and curiosity, they'll start to see that, like, this ain't no joke. Like, this is like, the best way I can describe it is like, you will feel more empowered to create in this ecosystem than you will have ever felt in your entire life. Like, building a company will mean such smallness compared to what this is, because it's like you see how reality, like building a policy that can run society and you playing with that in a way, that's so empowering, because it's like you don't have to go through the bureaucracy of red tape, right? Like you don't have to be like, oh man, like I got to go ask for permission to do this thing, and that may take like forever. And then like they may only give you like a slither of like hope to work on this one thing. Whereas our frame is just like, let's just build it and let's run it. And then now you're running it in real time. So it's so creative in the most artistic way because it's like there's no parameter set of like, um, you can't do that because such and such one, or I don't know, come up with an excuse, but I'm just saying, like, the only frame that we have is that we have anybody can build so long as we have the mainframe ready to go. And then once we have that, when people are starting to create like policies within simulations, you'd be technically getting issued a simulation terminal, and that simulation terminal would have an ID that would be connected to the toolbox terminal ID, and it may be a part of the ecosystem that you're basically going to partition for your simulation terminal ID. And inside that simulation terminal ID is a partition of the state of Utah, for example. And then you're going to be issued that ID to run that simulation terminal, which is separate from the function terminal. Because the function terminal is like prod. Like this is where we're at. And you can fork to go to a simulation terminal to run your simulation. And then everybody would be, if you want to merge that into the function terminal, then that would be a pull request that would be issued to then be validated to ensure that it's getting incorporated into the mainframe after validation of whatever you were running in the simulation terminal. But there's a series of whys we do it this way, but it's the only way that we could actually scale it in a way that can scale. And then it also keeps people honest when you're working in this framework, because everybody that's in the framework is you're basically able to work in the areas that you're interested in, and then also you're the best way I can describe it is that you'll end up where you really want to be anyways, because that's kind of how the ecosystem is. Like there's not really, I feel like if you didn't have fun in this ecosystem, I feel like you just probably don't have fun in life. It's probably the best way I can put it. Because it's like, it's so vast. Like, to not have fun in this thing would be like, you just don't want to have fun because it's so much fun. Like, but anyways, that's where I'm at with this whole thing. I'll keep I'll keep everybody updated on what I'm up to, but like that's the framework that I'm at right now. I just want to get this wrapped up because I got, the mod office thing is going to be important. The education app, onboarding wizard, and then boom, issued, and then everybody's ready to go. And then while everybody's coming in, I'm working on other aspects and stuff like that. And again, like guys, I don't think it would take more than like maybe I don't think it would take more than like 10 people that are really interested in this stuff for us to really just build out and finish the ecosystem, because so much work's already been done. Like it's not like you're coming in like it where nothing's done. I think you're coming in at the last mile, and it's like, oh snap, there's not that much work to, or there's still a lot of stuff to do, but if spread out across like 10 people or so, like you could actually build out the simulator and it could be like completely a testing ground for the future. And I think that is where this thing really starts to sing, because then you're able to modulate out the simulation terminals across the world and be running real-time economic viabilities on instruments that have only just become ideas that have really no fuse box to plug in. So it's like you can then now take it, run it through the simulation terminal, and then obviously you'll be running like that's a whole nother world. And then there's obviously other initiatives that we would be adding later as it starts to manifest more. But like I feel like when we turn it on is when it becomes like, I think, the most extravagant part of reality, because if you can come up with an idea, you can test it here. And then I just can't wait for like bringing in AI agents inside the ecosystem to be embedded inside each one of these sub panels, which is a part of the governance structure. and it's also a part of your mod office. So like all of these tools are just so part of reality, and it's like you're bringing fantasy into finality of like reality. So I don't know. That's like the best way I can describe it. You.